The Digital Service Act is the biggest change to startups, small businesses, and the economy as a whole. Here's what you need to know in this video coming up now. Hi, I'm Oliver and welcome back to the channel Ask Me Startup, where we talk about startups, small businesses, and the world that surrounds them. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and pushing the notification bell because it really helps this channel to grow. If you're into business, if you plan to start a business, if you have a small startup, please feel free to download my free startup checklist, link in the description below. So what is the Digital Service Act, or DSA? Well, it is a set of legislation in the European Union in order to protect consumers and businesses, foster innovation, and create massive transparency for any online services. Now, there are specifications in there, and I think we might need to go through them. But as a quick start, most of the stuff is not applying to small businesses and startups, but it applies heavily to big companies such as Google with their search engine or Meta with Facebook, for instance. These will have massive impacts, and they are forced to have transparency, which I'm pretty sure will foster a lot of new startups to thrive. So it affects online marketplaces, social networks, content sharing platforms, which can be a startup, app stores, online travel platforms, accommodation platforms, intermediary services such as internet providers and domain registers, cloud and web hosting services, and collaborative economy platforms, which of course is currently mainly startup driven. But the big chunk of people that will be affected heavily are the big companies you are aware of: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Apple, Spotify, Microsoft, Amazon. All these will be forced to be much more transparent and much more fair than they used to be. And they cannot use your information in the way they've done it in the past. But let's look at this in more detail now. At its core, the DSA framework will impose rules on the following: moderate content. How are you doing it? What are your rules of doing it? What is your behind algorithm? Advertisement. How do you advertise to people? How are the rules that you apply and others are paying for your advertisements? And what are the uses of your algorithmic processes? How do you use them? What are their specifics? And how do you guarantee that you are not neglecting competitors? Well, sounds quite difficult, and it will be for the big companies, but they can afford it. Trust me on that. For startups, that's a big chance because now you have the possibility to learn. And for instance, as a new startup idea, disclaimer, might work, I'm not sure, you can now work on those publicly available algorithms and do a comparison and clearly indicate how your customers should advertise, should place products on the platforms so that you or them will be visible much better than they are today. Because today, for instance, if you want to be listed on Google, I know many people say, yeah, it's quite obvious. You have to be transparent. You have to be real. You have to update your content regularly. It should have a lot of links and people would have to like it, blah, 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 blah. Reality is it's opaque. You really don't know what input directly resulted into which outcome. This is going to change, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to be significant. And from my personal gut feeling, there will be many businesses around this now. And the hope, of course, will be that these businesses will start a new competition and level a playing field. Now, the same is true for content providers or information providers such as Twitter or Facebook. They have to have rules in place in order to make sure that that's not illegal content. Now here we are at the protection of the consumers. And it's not only consumers as a B2C, but also B2B, business to business. So it's not discriminatory of it as an end consumer or an intermediary. Hence, many big companies will now be forced to make sure that there's no illegal content. As the rule of thumb, anything that is illegal offline is of course illegal online. but it's now better put in place. Is it easy? For sure not. Will they complain? Oh, they've done a lot of that. Should it be done? I would agree on the principle that it should be done. I'm not quite sure how it turns out, and at the end we will have to have a review on this a couple of years down the road. But the basic principle is so true. We cannot allow fake news. We cannot allow wrong sets of information that will be brought to millions because they are unable to fact check these. That's just a side remark. For businesses, you are better protected of being cut off. Just imagine yourself being on Amazon, and I'm going to talk about the digital marketing app, which is also around the corner in the next video. If you are on Amazon and Amazon suddenly decides, we don't like you anymore, they're just going to delist you. You have no idea how they're going to delist you. They might just shadow hide you. They might just not make you available in their internal search engine. Like, these things happen, and they kill businesses these days. This shouldn't happen, because if you have such a significant systemic risk or systemic power to the global internet market, you need to be transparent. You need to come up with different rules that are accepted by public. As a summary, we take a look on this website now, which is the official European Union website, and you can clearly see how those obligations actually hit you depending on where you are. Just keep in mind that a big or systemic company is considered as having 10% of the European market, or something like 45 million active users per month. So most of us will not be hit by this, but still, here is a list that you can take a look on what is required for you and your startup, no matter where you are, whether you're in India, whether you are in the US, whether you are in Africa, it doesn't matter. If you plan to deliver services to Europe, this is what applies for you. And it goes for transparency reporting, requirements on terms of service due to account and fundamental rights, cooperation with national authorities following orders, and points of contact where necessary, legal representative. This is the minimum requirements. Might not be easy for some people, but it is relevant. We want and have to get rid of illegal content on the web. Most likely it's not going to happen this way anyway, but nonetheless, the surface for the most or the majority of people using internet in Europe should be safe. And be aware, it's not the European Union only, as I mentioned. So if it's the whole European trading zone, which includes Switzerland and Norway, for instance. So if you follow that list further down, you can see that it becomes more and more complicated. And of course, specifically the transparency regulations and the risk management obligations are, I think, very critical, because they have to understand what kind of people are trying to advertise on their platform. This is one step forward of getting accountability into the system, where social media platforms, for instance, cannot just take the money of somebody's advertisement budget and not be accountable for how they spend it. Last but not least, and I mentioned it several times in the video already, is gatekeeper companies such as Google for search engine or Meta for social media currently hold the keys of blocking and preventing you from becoming public, or kind of, cutting you off your audience from one day to another. They will have to behave very, very differently, and hence are not allowed to use the data you generate for themselves in order to kick you out of the market. I think that is going to be a big, big change. Let's see if the intentions actually work in real life. We'll have a look at this topic most likely a couple of years down the road on this channel for sure. So as a summary, and I'm going to copy what the European Union has posted up here, what is the DSA trying to do for you, and how does it impact you, your business, and you as a consumer? It should be for better protection of fundamental rights, more choice and lower prices, less exposure to illegal content. Further, for providers of digital service, it will have legal certainty, because many countries currently have different rules, and that is totally disastrous for a big market like the European Union, and harmonization of rules, easier to start and scale up in Europe. If that is true, we'll see, but that's one of the reasons this video is done, because I hope it will come true. For businesses and users of digital services, there should be more choice, lower prices, and access to EU-wide market through platforms. That's a big hope, because if you start out your platform in Portugal, because you've just chosen Portugal as a starting hub, by the way, if you're interested, I'll link a video up here on the new startup law. This is what you're actually aiming for. You want to go to a country with the best competitive surroundings for your company, but still be able to play in the whole European market field on the same rules. And it will level the playing field against providers of illegal content. If that is true, I think that's most likely wishful thinking, because there will be always a way around these things, but it should become more complicated so that, let's say, 95% of the population is not directly confronted with these things. For society, we hope to get a greater democratic control and oversight over systemic platforms, which I think is the most crucial part in democracies currently, because we are facing Putins and the like with their tendency to create a narrative, write some fiction, some thoughtful processes from their mind that has nothing to do with the facts in real life. Nonetheless, democracy, and I think for everyone in the world, transparency and knowing what's fact-based is so much more important than anything else. And then you have the possibility to make up your own mind depending on the underlying facts, not on the facts somebody is reporting to you. And at the end, it's mitigation of systemic risks such as manipulation or disinformation. Because one day we will have to improve our societies and startups. Anyway, I thank you for paying attention in this rather long video and a rather complicated topic. Once again, I will link the law and its implication down below. You can read through it yourself. It's going to be quite excessive. But if you have a business that runs in Europe, I rather recommend you take a look at this right now. If you made it so far in this video, please subscribe, drop a comment, because it really helps this platform to grow. And as always, I'm going to see you next time.